U.S. military strike on Venezuelan boat kills 11, triggers global uproar. In the shadowed waters of the Caribbean, where the line between justice and aggression blurs under the veil of national security, the United States has once again flexed its military might, obliterating a Venezuelan speedboat and snuffing out 11 lives in a single, explosive instant. Framed by President Donald Trump as a heroic stand against narco-terrorists of the Tren de Aragua gang, this September 2, 2025, strike is no mere interdiction. It's a chilling escalation in a long history of U.S. interventions that prioritize power over principle, sovereignty over evidence, and spectacle over human rights. As the fiery footage Trump broadcast on Truth Social sears into our collective consciousness, we must confront an uncomfortable truth. This act, shrouded in unverified claims of drug smuggling, risks igniting a regional powder keg, eroding international law, and perpetuating a cycle of violence that solves nothing while endangering everything. It demands our unwavering scrutiny, for in excusing such unilateral lethality, we invite a world where might trumps right, and the casualties of security become the forgotten footnotes of history. Caribbean Sea, September 5, 2025. A U.S. military strike on a speedboat in international waters off Venezuela's coast has left 11 dead and unleashed a wave of international condemnation, intensifying the volatile U.S.-Venezuela standoff. The September 2 attack targeted a vessel that U.S. officials claim was smuggling narcotics to American shores, operated by members of Venezuela's Tren de Aragua criminal gang. President Donald Trump released dramatic drone footage of the boat's fiery destruction on Truth Social, hailing it as a bold strike against narco-terrorists in a ramped-up campaign to halt drug trafficking. Critics, however, slam the operation as an extrajudicial killing and a reckless escalation that risks plunging the region into conflict. The strike, likely executed by a drone or missile from a U.S. warship, obliterated the 4-engine speedboat in the southern Caribbean, far beyond Venezuela's 12 nautical mile territorial limit. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called it the opening move in a relentless crackdown on Venezuelan cartels, warning others would face the same fate. The 11 individuals killed, presumed Venezuelan nationals or gang affiliates, had no reported chance to surrender, with no attempts at interception or boarding. The U.S. has offered little evidence beyond the video and unverified intelligence claims, with no wreckage recovered or drugs confirmed as of September 5. A Defense Department official even questioned the boat's capacity to carry 11 people plus significant cargo, raising doubts about the official account. The operation stems from a major U.S. military buildup in August 2025, deploying 3 Aegis destroyers, including the USS Jason Dunham, 4,000 Marines, P-8 Poseidon surveillance aircraft, and submarines to the Caribbean to curb drug flows. Trump vowed to deploy every tool, legal, financial, and military, against cartels, while Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro accused the U.S. of plotting a regime change terrorist attack, mobilizing millions of civilian militias and deploying troops to border regions. In a provocative response, 2 Venezuelan F-16 jets buzzed a U.S. destroyer, an act the Pentagon labeled highly provocative and a potential spark for miscalculation. Legally, the U.S. justifies the strike under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and the Maritime Drug Law Enforcement Act, citing intelligence of an imminent threat. But human rights groups and analysts, including the Washington Office on Latin America, argue that lethal force without immediate danger or self-defense, as required by UN Charter Article 51, amounts to extrajudicial killing. The absence of public evidence verifying drugs has fueled accusations of violating international human rights law, with warnings of potential international criminal court scrutiny, especially if coerced civilians, often forced by gangs like Tren de Aragua to transport cargo, were aboard. Critics question the proportionality of annihilating the vessel when U.S. Coast Guard boarding, a standard interdiction tactic, was feasible, accusing Trump of prioritizing spectacle with his video release over humanitarian principles. A leaked U.S. intelligence memo further complicates the narrative, disputing claims that Maduro directly controls Tren de Aragua and noting Venezuela's role as a cocaine transit hub, not a fentanyl source. The strike has deepened a decades-long U.S.-Venezuela rift, tracing back to Hugo Chávez's 1999 rise and Maduro's 2013 presidency, exacerbated by U.S. sanctions and his 2020 narco-terrorism indictment. Maduro denounced the attack as a massacre, while allies Russia and China condemned it as US aggression. Conducted in international waters, the strike avoided direct violation of Venezuelan sovereignty, but Latin American nations fear it signals renewed US imperialism, threatening regional anti-drug cooperation. On social media platform X, opinions split sharply. Supporters, like Senator Marco Rubio, back the strike as a stand against cartels infiltrating US cities, while others, including MSNBC commentators, call it murder or a pretext for invasion, with one user warning, America just bombed a boat to justify its planned invasion. The incident echoes past US interventions, from the 1989 Panama invasion to capture drug lord Manuel Noriega, to the failed 2020 mercenary plot to oust Maduro, and the multi-billion-dollar Plan Colombia, which displaced drug violence without eradication. Tren de Aragua, born in Venezuela's Tocumen prison in 2014, has grown into a transnational menace, linked to apartment takeovers in Colorado and violence in New York and Chicago. Critics suspect ulterior motives, including securing Venezuela's vast oil reserves or countering Chinese and Russian influence, with Beijing's investments and Moscow's military aid bolstering Maduro's regime. X posts suggest the strike distracts from domestic US issues, like migration surges or Epstein-related scandals. Strategically, experts doubt the strike's effectiveness, citing failures of militarized campaigns like Mexico's drug war, which has claimed over 300,000 lives since 2006, or Plan Colombia, which shifted cultivation to Peru and Bolivia. Focusing on Venezuela ignores US drug demand, with over 100,000 annual overdose deaths driving the trade. Politically, the operation strengthens Trump's tough-on-crime image amid 2025 domestic pressures but risks radicalizing adversaries and alienating allies. Congress is poised to scrutinize the strike, with growing demands for transparency, names of the deceased, cargo manifests, or declassified intelligence, yet the White House has provided little clarity. As the Caribbean simmers, the strike underscores the need for diplomacy, economic aid to address Venezuelan poverty, and US demand reduction programs over kinetic operations. Without evidence and accountability, the operation fuels distrust and threatens regional stability, leaving the world to question whether this was a strike against crime or a spark for a broader conflict. Conclusion. As the echoes of the explosion fade into the Caribbean horizon, the US strike on that Venezuelan boat stands as a stark warning. Militarized solutions to complex global ills like drug trafficking not only fail to uproot the problem but sow seeds of greater instability, alienation, and conflict. By bypassing due process, ignoring proportionality, and prioritizing dramatic displays over diplomatic engagement, this operation exemplifies the perils of American exceptionalism, a policy that has repeatedly backfired, from Panama to Colombia, displacing violence without diminishing it. We cannot afford to normalize extrajudicial killings under the banner of security. Instead, we must demand transparency, accountability, and a pivot towards sustainable strategies. Robust diplomacy, economic aid to dismantle the poverty-fueling cartels, and addressing America's own insatiable drug demand. Only then can we avert a descent into broader war and forge a path to true peace and justice. The time to act is now, before the next strike claims more than lives, but the very soul of international order.